Let's talk about a very simple technique in product management, like basically to evaluate if your product or your idea actually makes sense or which feature to build or not to build. And funnily enough, it's a very known technique. What I'm going to talk about is the MOM framework, basically. And yet, almost all founders, especially the less experienced ones, of course, and a lot of product teams as well, in my experience, don't do that enough, right? Like we always tend to ask about direct feedback, right? And the issue with direct feedback, if I ask someone if it makes like if you like this feature or if you think that product is a great tool, right? A lot of people will tell you yes, right? Just like if you go to your mom and you ask her about her honest feedback, a lot of moms obviously will be nice to you because you're her son, her daughter, whatever, right? And she loves you. And there's a very similar pattern when you talk with even strangers about your idea or a feature that you want to build. People tend to be polite, right? And the reason for that usually is they want to avoid any kind of negative sentiment or discussions, arguments, and so on, right? So they rather give you positive feedback or soothing feedback. But I think a lot of you already have heard, like if someone didn't put their money down, it's usually not truly honest feedback, right? And the issue is you can't always ask for that. Maybe it's too early, right? You want to evaluate something, and conducting a full paid test in some capacity is also not always that simple, right? So what do? You just don't pitch your feedback, your feature or your product, but instead you ask generically about the pain points, right? You give a range where people can freely express themselves, right? Instead of asking, do you think we should build another fintech solution for Switzerland that does this, right? To focus on like with better UX or whatever. Instead of asking this, because a lot of people will say, yes, of course, there's always better. And yes, I would love that. I'm really unhappy with that, right? Once you then launch, oftentimes people don't, like it's oftentimes they're not a urgent or a big of enough pain to actually switch to your product, right? And you want to avoid that, obviously. So what to do instead? You apply the MOM framework, which basically says in its simplest form, hey, what do you think of using like how does your current bank provider, your current bank actually work? Are you like what pain do you experience transferring money within Switzerland, outside Switzerland, whatever, right? Like you really ask generically, and then you will quickly see, hey, is that a real pain point? What do people actually care about? Because they know like they can't hurt your feelings with that, right? And it's not a suggestive question, right? Because it's a very open and broad question oftentimes. So it gives people the ability to speak honestly and freely without knowing what you actually want to hear, right? So that's the important part here. Don't make questions or ask questions that pushes people into some kind of direction, right? And what I would suggest here is when you try to conduct such a MOM test, we nowadays have ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on, actually ask it to generate some questions that follow that MOM framework, right? And then evaluate yourself, like which questions actually make sense within your context and what you actually want to test for. But that's a really important and known framework, so it might not be new for a lot of people listening to this, but it's very underrated and a really important one, right? Because as said, people aren't too nice to tell you the harsh truth.